It's about to start, we'll talk about code or whatever we'll talk about today. It's about to start, so please hang tight while I check that everything is okay. Sound check, camera check, lights check. How's my hair? Oh, wait, I don't have any hair. Maybe put some pants on and I am good to go. So get ready wherever you are, 'cause this stream is about to start. Get ready wherever you are, 'cause this stream is about to start. Hi, my name is Leandro Facchinetti, and let's write some code together, shall we? What we have on the menu today is to continue with our little template for our little library for JSFX. So in case you're new here, we have been working on a library in JSFX, which is a language you use in REAPER for real-time audio processing. This library contains a design system for user interfaces, some algorithms used in digital signal processing, and a whole lot of utilities for user interfaces. And some of it we can abstract into the library. Some of the things we would like a user interface to do, we can extract into a library. Some things you sort of have to repeat every time you're using the library because it has to do with the sliders you have in a particular plugin. And Mage and Bo are here. Hello. It's great that you're here. I'm glad to have you here. I hope you enjoyed today's session. So, as I was saying, there are some things that we can abstract, some notions that we can abstract into a library, and there are some things that you have to copy and paste every time you use the library because it has to do with the particular sliders that you have in your plugin. And that's why there is this template, which gets you started. And we are going to hopefully finish a working version of the template so that we can return to the auto mixer, which is the effect that we have been working on for the longest time now. And I have a list of things. I have three lists of things to do. That's what I have. I have 3 lists of things to do. Hopefully today we can knock down these 4 items. These are good to have, and this is not something I can test right now because I don't know a whole lot about simple accurate automation. So we'll leave that for some other time, I guess. Let's get to business. So we have these 4 items. They are relatively self-contained and straightforward. Let's see if we can knock them down. The first is the way that the command modifier on the keyboard is working in the plugin. So let me load the template, and naturally you will not be able to see the movement of my hand. But the truth is that as I move the mouse, this kind of movement feels good. And when I hold command, I have a finer control. I have to move the mouse more to get to the same numbers. And when I first implemented this, I changed it so that when you hold command, you have even access to values in between, to values that are between 1 and 2 dB. When I'm not holding command, I can only go in integer numbers in this case. And when I'm holding command, I can go to any value in between, or I guess in steps of 0.1. And in hindsight, I don't like this. I think that you should have access to the same range of numbers with the same steps. Command is just going to help you move more slowly. So in order to accomplish this, never mind what I'm doing now, I'm just re-indenting code. In order to accomplish this, we will find the places where we call this _slider function, which quantizes the values There are two places, and we will just not look at control. We'll always use the finer step. That should do it. Let's check how this feels. Perhaps it is a bit too fast for this particular application, but I like the way that now I can have access to any number I want, but holding Command makes it easier for me to get there. Awesome. So 1 down, 3 to go. This second one is probably something that most people don't use. I don't use it myself. If you're watching this and you use this, or even if you knew about this, let me know. But it goes like this. In almost every place in Reaper, including the default sliders, you can hold Option on the Mac and probably Alt on the PC. And then when you drag and let go, it snaps back to where it was. You can even start sliding without holding Option, but before you let go of the mouse, you hold Option and then you let go of the mouse and it snaps back. Did you know about this? Do you use it? Let me know in the chat. I don't use this myself, but I thought it would be nice for our sliders to mimic the behavior of the JSFX sliders to the extent that it makes sense. So for instance, the fact that you have the same step when holding Command or not is something that is true of the default sliders. And when you hold Command, of course, you have finer precision. It moves more slowly. And when you double click, it resets. Our slider is doing that as well. So I thought it would be nice to have this Option drag behavior that snaps back, because then our sliders will feel familiar for people who are used to Reaper. And I think that that's the key, right? When we are developing a plugin, especially in JSFX, where you know that the host will be Reaper, I think that you should mimic the rest of the interface of the host for the most part, to the extent that it makes sense to do it. So it will be a new way of interacting with buttons. We have click and drag, we have double click. We will now have option click and drag. We also have command click and drag. So we have all these different ways of interacting. We will have one more. Oh, Mage is saying that I use the alt snap all the time, all the while for testing levels. Awesome. So at least one person out there will be happy that I'm implementing this. This is the part of the code where we are implementing mouse interactivity. This is handling the case where you put the finger on the button, and the alt behavior happens on the other end when you let go of the button. So I will copy this and paste it here. I think it makes sense to have this in sort of a chronological order. So the first thing that happens is you hold down the button, then you drag it around or you double click, and finally you let go of the button. So this event will fire. And in this case, what we want to do is sort of similar to what happens when you click and drag, except that we will not be offsetting the existing value by a certain amount. We will be resetting this. And in order to reset this, we will need to know what was the number when you started dragging. Because if I start dragging at 0, hold option at 6, and then let go at 13, it goes back to 0. So the alt behavior, the option behavior, is not to snap to when you pressed option. It is to snap back to where you started when you started dragging the slider. So as soon as you press down, we will have to take note of the current value I will call this, I guess, the start or the down value. I guess I'll call this the old or previous. Yeah, I guess I'll call this previous because that's what we are calling in other parts of the code, the previous value. So I'm going to store this previous. And then if you let go of the mouse, but not only that, also you have to be holding Option at that point. So let's go into the library and find the place where we have a variable for this, which is right here. So now we are saying, oh, it shouldn't be on hover. It should be the area is active. Oh boy, this is about to get complicated. The complication is when you press down the cursor, you press down the mouse button, you are on top of that area. But when you let go, you may no longer be. My cursor is no longer on top of the slider. It's no longer on top of this box. And I let go of it. So it's no longer active. Not really. So I have to check if the thing was active, and it becomes active when you are on top of it and you start dragging, it becomes active. But it has to be active and your cursor will be, you'll be letting go of the cursor. I think that we will run into a problem with this. God damn it, I thought that this was going to be a freebie. It's not going to be a freebie. Yeah, it's not going to be a freebie. God damn it. I thought that this was going to be easy to implement, and it's not going to be easy to implement. Let me explain why. Interactivity with the slider works like this. You put your cursor on top of the little area, the little interactive area that is your button, your parameter on the user interface, on the custom user interface. So you put your cursor on top of it. That's the first event that happens. It's a hover event. Then you hold down the button of the mouse. That's the second event. That's a mouse down event. Then you, as soon as the mouse down event has occurred, you get into this other stage. So keep track of states and events. Being hovered is a stage. Mouse down is an event. So you got into this active stage because a mouse down event has occurred. You are now into the active stage. And then you can drag around. Great. Then the next thing that happens is you let go of the mouse. That is a mouse up event. And that gets you into, I guess, the initial stage. Let's call it the initial stage. So it gets you back into the initial stage. There is a little state machine for people who know what state machines are. The problem is, I'm interested in firing some code into running this code when I'm letting go of the mouse and I happen to be pressing Option or Alt on the PC. And not only that, but the area was active. I was hovering. And I haven't really run the code to make sure, but the problem that I anticipate is that as soon as I let go of the mouse, as soon as this is true, this becomes false. And I cannot simply test for this condition because I don't want to reset the field anytime at all. I just want to reset it when it is being changed. So I have to check that it has been active on the previous frame and that it's no longer active now. So let's look at the definition of what it means for the area to be active in the first place. The definition of active is either you are hovering and you just press down the button, or you were active and you are still holding down the mouse. So as soon as you let go of the mouse, you are no longer active. So it's never the case that these two things I highlighted are true at the same time. Not as it stands anyway. So I guess this is one of those problems where you have a range where the range is the time in which the area is active, and you would like the range to be inclusive at the ends of the range. And right now it's not inclusive. Right now it's inclusive in the beginning, it's exclusive at the end. And that's going to be a problem. Let me prove my point by saving this and running the code, because this I think is correct. I think I believe this part, and I think I believe that part as well. So I think that if this code runs, it's going to do the right thing, but I don't think this code is going to run. So to test this, I can just let go of the mouse, holding Option, and yes, it did not snap back. So this code did not run. Well, to make this I think maybe one solution for this is I will say that the thing is active if you have your cursor on top of the area and you press down the button, or you are active and it's not the case that you let go of the mouse. Is this going to help? No. Not really. Because as soon as this is true, this will be false. Oh well. This interactive area function is called before we start querying the state of the interactive area. And by then, the mouse up event will have set this to false. What I want to have happen is you let go of the mouse, this event fires, and this is true for just one more frame so that this has a chance of running. How can I do that? Perhaps someone has an idea in the chat. M9 is here. Hello. It snaps back if you let go of the drag first. It follows the drag position if you let go of Alt first. Exactly. I explained this last time I mentioned this, but I didn't explain again. So yeah, it's true. If I start dragging and it's at 0, I start dragging. I didn't let go of the mouse yet. I can still move it around. Now I can hold Option, and it doesn't really matter if I was holding Option when I started dragging or if I hold Option in the middle of dragging. But now that I'm holding both the mouse and the Alt key, the Option key on my keyboard, if I let go of the mouse first, it snaps back. If I let go of Option first and then let go of the mouse, it does not snap back. So that's the behavior that we are trying to emulate. M9 is saying you should have the control get bigger in size the more the number increases. Lol. You should have the control get bigger in size the more the number increases. You're saying that this box should get bigger? That's kind of funny. I think that this, of course, is not the case for this example here. I don't think that that would be advantageous, but I am thinking of having some controls that are not just boxes that you click and drag on, but things that you can actually move about. So I guess the classic example is you have a compressor showing the waveform over time. Like so, it's showing the waveform over time. Oh, but it's not picking up my microphone, is it? How do I set an input? Like that. Okay, so now we have the waveform, and you can click and drag on this slider to move this red line. I think it would be lovely if it was possible for me to click and drag on the line itself. And for doing that, we have something that is like this. We are not making the box bigger, but we are changing the display while we are modifying the value under the display. And Tail is here. Hey, what's up? It's great to have you here. Following your suggestion, I checked the DX7. Is it DX7 or DX9? The keyboard emulation DX7V. DX7V. Yes. This that you developed. And I didn't have the time to actually play with the demo yet. I will. But I read the documentation, and the website is great, explaining a bit of the history and whatnot. I don't think you were involved in this promotional website, but good job for you and your team, because it is a great website, and I'm looking forward to playing around with FM synthesis some more, and I will definitely check this out. Anyway, you were saying, hi, maybe you can do active previous equals active. Yeah, that is a solution. But, and I thought about this, but I'm trying to think of some other way of doing it, because for now I'm using a bitmap to store the state of the interactive area. And maybe it's a bit too cute to do it like this, but I'm using a bitmap for that, and especially because I am using a bitmap. But I guess for any kind of data structure, if there was any other way of doing it, I would prefer it to save one field on the data structure, but maybe I will have to bite the bullet and do this. And Fatis is here. Hey, great to have you here. So yeah, coming back to the problem at hand, I would like for the active to be true while this event is happening. Well, here is one thought. Let's come back to the original implementation. This is a variable that is true if the mouse is being held. And I guess the up event will fire when you are no longer holding the button. So we already have this notion of a previous state. And that's not for the state of the interactive area, it's for the state of the mouse. I'm thinking that maybe this is too cute, but it could be storing not only the previous state of the mouse, it could be storing 2 previous states of the mouse. And then I could check, is the previous to previous down and the previous up? If so, fire the up event. But I don't know. Let's not. I guess I would just store the previous active. Yeah, I think that that's what I would do. So active hover disabled, is that ever used in the code base? It is not. Not even implemented. Great job. Or maybe instead of this, I could have an event for an interactive area. Right now I only have stage in the interactive area. I have hover or active or disabled, and these are all states. I don't have any events in the interactive area. The events have to do with the mouse management. The mouse has events, like the mouse being pressed is an event. The mouse being let go is an event. But the interactive area has no events associated with it. The interactive area could have an event of I have been hovered. My previous state was unhovered and now I have been hovered. And similarly, I have been blurred. So I was hovered, I'm no longer hovered, I'm now blurred, I have been blurred. So events that happen in the interactive area may be a more principled solution for the problem. I think that's a more principled solution for the problem. So suppose that there was a blurred. I'm using the terminology used in CSS. When you put your cursor on top of something, it's the hover event. And when you take your cursor out of that area, it is the blur event. And there is the onBlur event handler in JavaScript, for instance. So I'm going after that terminology. Maybe there is some other REAPER terminology for these events that I should be using instead, but here we are. That's what I know. So we wouldn't even need to check the position of the mouse or the event on the mouse. We could just check, well, it's not the blurred event because I'm not interested in the hover state. I guess it's the deactivated event. So you would go from initial state to hovered. In the hovered event, and you would get into the hover event stage. Then you would have the activated event that gets you into the active stage. Then you would have the deactivated event that gets you back into the initial stage. The initial state is, in this case, is not reified. It's not represented in the data structure. It is just the absence of all the states that gets you back into the initial stage. Yeah, this is a solution that I like. It's a bit more work, but it is a solution that I prefer. And maybe we could even incorporate this notion of double clicking. Because as it stands, double clicking is not something that happens in the interactive area. It's something that happens to the mouse, and we are sort of punning on the fact that the mouse is on top of the interactive area at that point. But we could have a first-class notion of I have double-clicked in the interactive area. That could be an event in and of itself. Yeah, every occurrence of double-click is preceded by mouse left or right, or something to that effect. Yes, now this is a solution I like better. Yeah, that's the one we are going to try and implement. It's going to be hard without true event routines. Oh, so perhaps we are on the same page, because I think you reached the same conclusion I reached, that we should have events on the interactive areas. Oh, what happened, Fotis? So before we can actually do this, we'll have to do this part. So now the interactive area will have hovered, hover, blurred, activated, deactivated. Yeah, I'm sort of mixing events and states in the data structure, but I think I'm fine with that. And I think I'm going to deal with something like, what is the difference between deactivating when... So there are two ways of deactivating. You can deactivate when you're outside the interactive area, or you can deactivate while you're inside the interactive area. But I think I will deal with that by just firing a deactivated followed by a hovered event. Or maybe the hovered event should be independent of the activation, and then you could be hovering and active at the same time. Let's go with that second option. All right, so all I've got to do is implement these things. I have a data structure for it, but I have to implement the behavior. Okay, I created local variables for the previous and the current notion of that stage. And then depending on the previous and the current notion of that stage, I will trigger the events, which I guess is a more elaborated notion of this. In the end, it will boil down to this. No escaping that. But at least I think that with this notion of events, it will be more principled, I think. Let's see if I got all the instances of the variable. I think I did. Let's check this one. Yes, that looks right to me as well. And these should be like so. Yes, exactly. So what I did was introduce two previous variables, these two variables, and when I modify them, I instantiate new variables without the previous suffix. Before, we had code that read like this, or even code that would have no previous suffix at all, but then we would be losing the previous active stage. And now we have both the previous and the current, and then we can compute the events. So let's go ahead and do that. We will be setting almost all these 6 fields, I guess. Not almost, we will be setting all of them. Yeah, that's not good. You see me using these rectangular cursors a lot in Visual Studio Code, and when you have a rectangular cursor for copying that does not match the number of lines when pasting, you end up with that garbled mess. But now I got it right. So the hovered event happens when the hover previous was not the case, and the hover is the case. The hover straightforward blurred happens when the hover previous was the case and hover is no longer the case. Activated happens when the active previous was not the case and active is the case. And lastly, the activated happens when it was active and it is no longer active, just like that. And then this makes sense now because we have implemented it. So when you are deactivating the interactive area and you are holding down Alt, I reset. Let's see if that works. I can still click and drag. I can hold up a command to go slower. I can double click to reset. And if I hold Option and let go, it snaps back. Snapping back to 6.5 now, so no hands. I'm gonna hold Option, I'm gonna click and drag, 6.5. Brilliant, we implemented it. It was not as easy as I was thinking before the stream started, but not so complicated as I started to think when I started implementing it. So all we got to do is remember the previous value when starting and restoring if necessary. And in the library, we implemented the notion of states as well as events in the interactive area. Beautiful. And with that, we knocked the second item. We had 4 to begin with. We are down to 2. Awesome. There was a spoiled brat who was accusing kids of bullying her, and she almost fooled me until it was revealed she was the bully herself, and everyone, students and teachers, called her out for it. Oh, that's a lot of drama. Oh, man. I'm sorry about that. Add labels to parameters. That's straightforward. That's not too terribly complicated or interesting, but it is necessary because I want to be able to sort of copy and paste blocks of code for this. So let's just go to the JSFX section and start writing some things down here. I'm pondering if the label should be clickable and draggable as well. What do other plugins do in this aspect? Well, the JSFX default sliders don't have that behavior. You cannot click and drag on the label. Let's look at Nova. because right here it is a design reference for me, and the frequency is not clickable. Just the value is clickable. Oh, nice. If you hold Control, not Command, Control, then it quantizes. I like that. Perhaps that behavior would be even more useful, because sometimes you don't care about the number and you let it go and you go do something else. But sometimes you do want to have a neat round number. And in my case, it is hard. You have to hold Command and then drag it, while you could just be holding Control. But whatever, we'll go with the Reaper default behavior. So, do I make the label clickable and as well? I think that will only be confusing. Well, let's go to another design reference for me when I was thinking of designing this interface. Not this. Don't read that. This. Yeah, labels are never clickable. We'll go with that. Glad things got solved, but maybe not discuss such events in a public forum like this. I think it's okay to discuss these kinds of things as long as you don't name names. I think it should be okay. What do you think? Yeah. But I think that people should be able to talk about things that happen, the problems and how to solve them. I think that the principle of any good human interaction, including these kinds of humans interactions, is like good communication. So it's important that we are able to talk about it as long as we don't name names. And perhaps don't call people spoiled brats. But I'm not gonna blame you. All right, so we will not change anything about the interactive area itself. Another thing is, should the label be on top of or to the side of the thing that it labels? I'm gonna go with on top of, because it's going to align better. So what I want is to move this further down, so something like 10. And then I will print the label and then deal with the interactive area, just like that, because then the label is sort of near the top. So when reading the code, it reads nicely. You will see the label for what this is right away. Volume, and we don't need to format a number, so we can do just like that. And in terms of colors, I think I'm gonna go with what we have here. Maybe I will make this bold. So font family, font, where is font weight? Oh, right. Font weight is complicated, isn't it? No, it's not complicated. It's just a font style. I want to change from font style regular into bold. There you go. And I don't want to be at this Y position. I want to be above it by I'm going to say like 2 heights. That should do it. Let's read it. Or look at it. Okay. I like the bold. I do not like the spacing. Ah, that's better. I wonder why this worked. Oh yeah, right, it makes sense. This Y position is the top. So if I go above by 1 line, that works. Okay. And then let's do the other one. I will take it. It does not win any awards in terms of, oh my god, this looks amazing, I really want to use this plugin just because it looks so awesome. Doesn't win any awards in that front. It is not like the Lava Reverb. This is a plugin that you would want to use just because it looks so awesome. My plugin is not like it, nothing like that. Heck, it's not even trying to look like a piece of gear. Like, what was the one that I'm thinking about? This doesn't even look like this. Mine is much simpler. But I will take it. It's functional. It works well with the rest of the Reaper interface. It takes very little space. I like it. There is one thing that I want to change, however, and that is just an internal thing. But I think that the Y coordinate should not be the middle here. It should be the top left. So let's change that real quick, which means we will return to 2. And over here, instead of subtracting, what we'll do instead is add over here. But not only over here, also in some other places. So I think that what I want to do is to have 2 variables. Oh boy, it's going to be a whole reorganization of how this is laid out. It's not going to change anything about the visuals, but it's going to change everything about the implementation because, of course, the label is an afterthought, but it is the thing on the top. So I think that the coordinate system should be in relation to it. Let's do it real quick. It's not too difficult. So first thing is the coordinate for the interactive area is now not just for the interactive area, it's also for the label. So I think I'm gonna change this to perhaps be just not mention interactive area, I think. I guess I will do it like this, interactive area X. And then we will have the interactive area Y. And the width will not be of the interactive area, it will be of the whole component. And then the height will also be I'm debating in my head if I should have the height of the whole component or the height of each part of it. Guess I will do it like this for now. Well, it's not really the height, it's the line height. That's what it is. Now I like it. Now, yeah, that makes more sense. So we have the width of the component, the line height, the X of the component, the label Y, and the interactive area Y, which is right below the label. All right, so here we will use the label Y. The width and the line height, just like that. Good. And here we will use X, the interactive area Y, width and line height. And here we will use X, interactive area Y, width and line height. X, interactive area Y, width and line height. Great. Let's do the same for attack. X, and then we move this up. Width is the same, height gets turned into line height. X, interactive area, and label. X, interactive area Y, width and line height. Oh, hang on, this is in the wrong order. I want to print the label first. And then this becomes label Y. Width and line height. X, interactive area Y, width and line height. X, interactive area Y, width and line height. X, interactive area Y, width and line height. Okay. I think I did it. All right, it looks the same, but now the coordinate system is better laid out. Hang on, I'll be right back. I don't know if you can hear this, but someone is ringing the bell. I will see you in a minute. It was the weirdest thing. I picked up the intercom and there was this laughter like, and I said, hello, who's there? And the intercom just, so as far as I can tell, this is going to be my last stream and a clown is going to come in and kill me. What the hell was that? I have no idea. So what's happening here on the chat? On my last minutes, let me read the chat before I'm killed by a clown. Well, I'm an Air Windows guy, so I will be literally the last person to complain about a minimal GUI. Yes. Oh, thanks, Dale. Thanks. That's very nice of you. Yeah, I am. I guess I am. You cannot make this stuff up. Only live television, people. Only live television. Okay. That was a bit more work than I expected. As usual. Whatever. Add labels to parameters. We did it. Awesome. There is this one last item that is in the library and not in the template. But I think it is good to do this. So if we can, if we have the time, we'll try and do this. The thing is, we have a notion of keeping track of time in both the audio thread as well as in the user interface thread. And this is useful for many things. It is useful for detecting if the other thread is running. And it is useful for things that have to do with timing. So for instance, in the auto mixer, we have this notion of different plugin instances being able to communicate, and multiple plugin instances will need to share their RMSs. It's a whole thing. We'll not get into the auto mixer today, but they have to communicate and they have to keep track of whether the other instances are running or not, because you may instantiate a plugin and you may bypass it, you may delete it at all from the track. So you need to keep track of whether the other plugin instances are active, whether they are running. And to do that, we have this notion of time. And I mentioned the first reason is from the audio thread, you want to know if the user interface is showing, and from the user interface, you want to see if the plugin is bypassed or if it is processing audio. So in all these cases, it is important to keep track of time. And the way that I was doing this up to this point was I was counting. That's how it worked. I was counting. So we know that the audio thread, if it is running, will run 48,000 times or whatever your sample rate is per second. And the user interface will run at about 30 times a second. So I would keep counters on both threads, and the counters would be challenging one another. So for instance, on the user interface thread, I would set a variable to a large number, and on the audio thread, I would be decrementing that value. So if the user interface is not running to set that number, but the audio is being processed, that variable will be decreased down to 0, where it stops. And then we can tell from the audio thread that the user interface is not showing, and vice versa, which is a clever trick, probably posted by Tail in the REAPER forums. And the problem with this is that you have to be smart about the way that you do the counting for all the pieces to work together. And it is sort of working, but it has some glitches. If you have something that takes a long time on the user interface thread, or if your system is under stress, then you may not have enough CPU to render the user interface. You may start dropping a couple frames. And as you do that, these timers will go out of whack and you would lose and reset some parts of the user interface, for instance. It may seem as though the user interface is not running, but it actually is running. It's just dropping frames. And there are some things like the communication between plugin instances, the AutoMixer instances that want to know if the other instances are running. That is also, it necessitates looking at the clock. You cannot do this simply by counting, or perhaps you could have some sort of global counter that every instance tries to keep incrementing, but that's not how we do it. We actually look at the clock, and there is a function in JSFX to look at the clock. I was trying to avoid using that function because it is a bit more expensive. It's a bit cheaper to count than it is to look at the clock. But of course, the clock is more precise. And that's what this item is about. Instead of counting, I would just bite the bullet and look at the clock. But I will only do it once per loop in the audio thread and once per loop in the user interface thread. And I think that that will simplify things a whole lot. So let's go into the sample function, which runs on every sample. So this is the audio thread. And we have here this notion already, and that was necessary for the AutoMixer, so we brought this in. And then we have this, which is a bit silly. This is the counting that I was referring to. This is us challenging the user interface thread and decrementing that counter. And this is us setting our counter for the user interface to challenge. See, this stuff. So the user interface and the audio thread are competing on this counting idea, which is nice. It's a nice solution for the problem. I think that just looking at the clock will be cleaner conceptually, so that's what we'll do. First of all, is there a reason why these two sections are in different orders? I don't think so. We have, for instance, sample reset if the sample was not running. And then this GFX reset, which seems to be the corresponding line, is not the first line, but I think it could be. I think it should be. And this is the line that is decrementing stuff. And that's the last line here. So I think it should be the last line there as well. Good. And this is the line that sets our variable for the challenge. So at least the two sections are equivalent. And this is the link to the forum post in which Tail showed this technique. Oh, it was Geraint, it wasn't Tail. But I think Tail was part of this conversation. Well, what do I know? It was Geraint. Hey. Creepy, yes. Yeah, system time. Yes, that's exactly what I mean. Time precise will give you the system clock. So we can simplify this by saying something like this. We didn't have a lot of screen real estate here on the stream, so I will do this in this section and then split the screen again. So in the sample block, we have a couple to-dos related to this actually. Perhaps change the strategy to use this instead of a counter. Exactly, that's what I'm doing. And perhaps rename sample stuff into audio. No, that we will not do. And to begin with, we would like for this to be undefined. And this whole play state situation happens below, so I will leave this to match that and this to match this. Good. So we keep track of the previous by doing this. So maybe what I should be doing is that. That to begin with is undefined. Or you know what? It could be just time precise. Or it could just be 0. Because I'm thinking about the ways you use this. And for the most part, we are interested in keeping track of the previous time to know how much time has passed and to know if we have been reset. If we were bypassed and we are no longer bypassed. So I think that 0 is a good default or a good initial value, because then when we subtract the current from the previous, we will have a large number, because this is going to be a large number, minus 0 will be a large number, and then we'll say we have been reset. Yeah, I think that's good. So is this section being reset? And when I say reset here, I just mean the plugin was bypassed, it's no longer bypassed. So, oh, I guess we also need the notion of running. Is it running? It is running if the difference between the current time and the previous time is less than a small number. And this is given in microseconds, if I remember correctly. Oh no, it is just seconds. So let's say it is running if it has run in the last second. In other words, it takes us 1 second to realize that we have been bypassed. Or I guess you could bypass and unbypass in less than 1 second and the plugin would not notice. Maybe 1 second is too generous, half a second, because this is given in seconds. So half a second. Good. Let's also keep a notion of previous for that. Can we initialize this like this? Has false already been defined? Yes. So was it running? No. What was its time? 0. And then this previous time will be 0 to begin with. And this will be a large number. So was it running? False. Is it running now? Well, if very little time has passed, yes, it is running. Great. Is it reset? Well, if it was not running, that's silly. If it was not running, then this code wouldn't be called. If it wasn't running, this code would not have been called. So that's a silly proposition. Oh boy. Let's get back from the top with the realization that this code doesn't even run if the plugin is bypassed. So to begin with, time is 0, that holds. And running, whether it was running, is false. No, that's a nonsensical question. You cannot ask this in this section. You cannot not ask if the sample section is running from the sample section. You have to ask if the JSFX section is running from the sample section. Come on, Leandro, you can do this. The notion of counting time holds. This doesn't hold. And this is also silly. But this is not silly. If I will go with greater than or equals here, just to make sure that everything overlaps right. So the sample section has been reset if the time that has elapsed is too great. Looking good. And now let's suppose that the equivalent code exists in the JSFX section, so we can set the JSFX running variable. That holds if that. And I think that there is a nice side effect here that I'm not sure will impact anything, but now we have a notion of being reset that is independent of the JSFX even running. So there is a way for you to have the JSFX not running and bypass and unbypass the plugin by holding Shift and clicking here. And previously, it would not pick up the fact that it has been bypassed because the JSFX wouldn't be there to challenge that little number. Of course, when this happens, when the plugin is bypassed and the user interface isn't showing, no code on the plugin is running. The audio thread is inactive, the user interface is inactive, there is no code running in the plugin. But still, it's nice that now this notion is more properly implemented, I think. And now let's do the same to the JSFX section. Looking good. And then we more or less copy and paste this and adapt it. So anything that was JSFX becomes banana, anything that was sample becomes JSFX, and anything that was banana becomes sample, like that. That's it, I think. Does it work? That's the million-dollar question. Does it work? Let's load the library and look at the running variables. So is the JSFX running? Yes. Is the sample running? Yes. If I bypass the plugin, the sample running thing should go to 0. But it's not going to 0. Oh, I see the problem. I see the problem. You see the problem as well, don't you? You are screaming at your screen right now, aren't you? I know you are. I'm comparing the wrong thing. I'm comparing, for instance, in the sample section, I am comparing the time as declared by the JSFX section. That's not the correct thing. I need to be comparing my own time because I am running. I know I am running. So I should be comparing to myself. But keeping track of the previous time is still necessary for us to know if we have been reset. Okay, in light of that, let's go back to JSFX. And change this line. There you go. We are looking at the running variables. The time variables are pretty straightforward, but just for the sake of it, let's look at the time variables. So here are the time variables and the previous time variables being incremented as you would expect, because time is moving forward where I live. And then the reset variable is true for only one cycle, so we are not able to see it here on the debugger. But the running variables, those we should be able to see. Both the user interface and the audio thread are running, so these are both ones. Why is RMS running sum of squares something something here? Oh, these are addresses, that's fine. Then I bypass and the sample running goes to 0. I turn off the user interface and this does not change because the audio thread is not running to set this. So I will unbypass the plugin from here and then the samples should be running now. God damn it. But that's all right, really, because I am not interested in asking this question from the audio thread. I'm interested in asking this question from the user interface. So as long as I open the user interface and this is answered correctly, and it is, I'm good. Similarly, I'm not interested in asking this question when the plugin is showing. So it would be okay for this to be wrong. As it will not be wrong, but it is okay. It would be okay for this to be wrong if the JSFX is running. Because I'm always interested in asking if the other is running. Okay, so I think I was able to re-implement this correctly using times. All right, I'm happy with this. I will call it a day. We were able to do the 4 things we set out to do. These are good to have. I'm not sure I'm gonna do them, but I think that next time we will actually bring this template back into the auto mixer and have some cute little sliders just like these sliders. Oh no, snapping isn't working. I'm holding Option. It's not snapping. Something broke. What the hell? Is it because of the plugin being bypassed? No. I'm holding Option. It's not coming back. This one is coming back. I didn't implement this for the attack. Oh man, I forgot about it. Let's do it real quick. It's just 2 lines, 3 lines, and we can copy the lines from here. So when we are here, we set this and that. And then we copy these 3 lines, paste there, change anything that has to do with volume to dB into something that is in terms of attack ms. We load the plugin, and then Snap is working. That's how you do it. Okay, so I will not tackle these things. I think that instead I will go to the auto mixer and start implementing a user interface using this notion. Could we extract some of these into functions in the library? Perhaps. There is some repetition going here, but I think that in terms of how we want to display things, and if we want to have that line that moves with the parameter on the user interface, I think that that will not work well with any abstractions. So I will keep this big chunk of stuff you have to copy and paste for the time being. And with that, we'll be able to move back into the auto mixer, bring this user interface stuff, and do some linked parameters and everything. It will be crazy. It will be awesome. Looking forward to it. But not tomorrow. The schedule is that tomorrow I will probably, 90% chance, that I will be over at IDDQD Sound, and we will be writing some code to do data bending, not binding. We'll do data bending, data moshing. We will continue on that idea. It will be a lot of fun. I have plenty of ideas, and I learned a lot since the last stream. Looking forward to implementing some of these things. Then on Wednesday, we will be here talking about Kill the Newsletter. So we'll be doing some Node.js, TypeScript, JavaScript, that sort of thing. Then on Thursday, probably we will return to the auto mixer with this stuff that we implemented today. And that's the plan for this week. So I see you tomorrow over at IDQD Sound, or maybe here if things don't work out well. But I think we'll be there over at IDQD Sound. So for the time being, thank you M9, Tail, Bo, Fotis, and am I missing someone? Mage, for joining me here on the chat. Thank you to everyone else who's watching this, people who support me on PayPal, Patreon, that sort of thing. Make sure you go to the link in the description, go to my website, and from there you can join all of us and many more intelligent and nice people over at Discord. I hope to see you again in the near future. Have a good one. Bye. Thank you for watching the stream. You know how great it has been. Or maybe it sucked, and I am glad that you stuck with me. And soon we'll all be back together for some more coding or talking or chilling. The next time I'll be streaming.